right, welcome back to the Motion Mentors Parkour Business Owners Podcast. Today we are interviewing the owner of Nebraska Parkour Gym, Mitchell Tillwick. So Mitchell hired me and Christopher to come into his gym and transform it, getting it a sales team, training its coaches, increasing prices, implementing a ton of different new systems. We were able to make a really great transformation with that gym and with Mitchell's experience of being an entrepreneur as well. So Mitchell, welcome to the call.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to see you guys again.
Absolutely. And also joining us is Motion Mentor co-owner, Christopher Hollingsworth.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here. And for everyone listening to the call, welcome as well.
Okay. So Christopher, you had some questions prepared. We both worked with Mitchell, but in different capacities. So Christopher worked with the coaching staff with mindset around team leadership. And I came in a lot with the sales team, sales engineering, which I can explain, and the marketing and the actual tactics of getting more members. And of course, both of those things really align to just create an epic and profitable gym. So Christopher, with your first question, tell us what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Jimmy. And what I was wanting to get into with Mitchell initially, and this is mostly for anyone listening to the call, I was hoping that you could share with us what were some of the initial challenges that you were facing at Nebraska Parkour that made you realize, oh, hey, I actually really have to change something here. I've got to reach out and seek some mentorship. And the reason why I wanted to start with that is because many gym owners may find themselves in a similar situation as you did, but without knowing what the next steps are, or maybe not being able to identify what specific challenges that they're facing that they should reach out for help on. So yeah, I was just hoping you could start there, share with us what initial challenges you were facing that had you reach out.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll start by kind of going to like the formation of the company and go from there. But so we formed in October of 2018, launched in March of 2019. And just like a lot of other gyms that started out, we operated in the unused spaces of gymnastics and tumbling facilities, as well as local outdoor parks. And so I actually worked at one of the gymnastic facilities, became pretty involved there. Honestly, just worked my shift and jumped around in open gyms. And then eventually, it's like, all right, hey, the parkour community is dying. So like it either dies here or I form a company and try and make that happen. So talked to the owners and they actually were like, okay, this isn't as dangerous as we thought it was because you showed us like a test class. And so we started up some classes. I remember like our very first student too. 4 years go by. And so we moved around for different reasons. One, COVID. Two, those gyms grew. They ran out of space and like, hey, we don't have space for you to be in the summer. And keep in mind, like Nebraska winters hit pretty hard. So at the end of every summer, it's like, oh no, we don't have a place. So we were scrambling pretty hard sometimes. But we found a place luckily every winter. And so by the end of 4 years, we acquired enough revenue because we didn't have any overhead expenses. And then we also had some grant funding from the COVID relief that we were able to use to get our own brick and mortar space. And so by that time, we were about like 60, like lower 60s in regards to our students. We had about 4 coaches on, including myself, working part-time between like, typical class hours, Saturday mornings, and then like weeknights, like 2 to 3 classes a night. Keeping in mind, a lot of these classes have like maybe 2 students, while some of them had like 6. Our coach to student ratio is 1 to 8. So we don't have any classes more than 8 students at a time. But when we built this gym, it took about 3 months. And so we were like, this is it. This is where we're going to explode. And so as soon as we opened our open house, we have a 2250 square foot space. The grand opening was so packed. We were about like 5-hour grand opening. And it was like worrisome. I'm like, we have too many kids in here. I am worried. And there are just lines like, is this even safe anymore? We exploded with our grand opening. And then we probably had like maybe 1 kid sign up after that from the grand opening. And then for the next year and a half, we just stayed at mid to lower 60s. It's like, all right, well, we had these numbers outside when we weren't paying any overhead. We got our own gym. We built all this giant equipment, like 17 feet high. Why are we not getting any students? And keep in mind, this entire time, I'm working full time, and so it's typical like entrepreneur job where you work full time and then you spend your hours building the program outside of that. And so my background is in marketing. I know some dev languages like JS, and then just basic HTML, CSS. It's pretty easy. I'm an athlete for a good amount. So, and then like 10 years of teaching. So like I have, in my opinion, like the skills underneath my belt to hold a good program. But even then, we just weren't growing with a gym. The only one in Nebraska, for that matter. Pretty much one of the only parkour programs. And so like a year and a half, we were running ads and just nothing happened. And so at some point, I left one of my jobs, full-time jobs, just because it wasn't a good fit. And like, all right, we need to go in full-time. I need to go in full-time. And like we've exhausted all of our attempts, all of our resources. Like we put in money towards Facebook, SEO, Instagram. We've done the whole shebang that everyone does. But like even then, I was like, all right, it's been a year and a half. I can try all these other like these 10 things that might work, but given everything else I've tried, like this probably isn't going to work. And even if it does, it's the bang for the buck is not going to pay out what it needs to in order for me to get paid and two, for the gym to be sustainable. Because we were at lower 60s again. Our break even was about 83 students, and we just weren't hitting it. And so at that point in time, it was just like, all right, this is dumb. Let's get someone who knows what to do. So I saw Jimmy post a lot in the gym owners group. It's like, all right, they're putting out like super quality content. And that makes sense. And so I scheduled a call with Jimmy. There's a whole consulting process of, is this a good fit? And so that was reassuring. And so he's like, yep, checkbox 1, checkbox 2, checkbox 3. I already know what you need. So after that, like right before we flew them in, right before you guys came in, our numbers jumped from like 65 to 85. I'm like, oh, why did I hire them? We had all these new students come in. It's like, this was a mistake. Was it? I don't know. And so that was just kind of partially due to seasonal demand, kind of partially due to ads. But then when you guys came in, like our numbers jumped like way more than that. And so, yeah, I guess that's to answer your question, like those were kind of just like the thoughts I had in mind. And like, all right, well, all these other gyms this is what they have. This is what they're doing. We're doing the exact same thing and better than a lot of them to boost my own ego, even though I'm wrong. But yeah, and so it's just like that need of just having that mindset of, hey, I have all these skills, but the results aren't showing. So let's get someone in here who knows what they're doing.
So
that is so great.
Yeah, that's incredible. So to recap that for the listener, you opened the gym to save your community, which that's super commendable right there. But you saw that your outdoor numbers translated pretty one-to-one to your indoor numbers. And right there is something that we see a lot with parkour gym owners is that, especially on the topic of how much to charge, it's that, oh, I don't have the world's most epic gym. I am missing this idyllic version of the best training ground ever. Therefore, we can't charge like anything more than this rock bottom price. But what you just pointed out is it didn't matter for your people, like the quality of coaching and just having that connection with the coach and with parkour was the same for your client outdoor and indoor, and those same kind of that base number stuck around before you started going above and beyond. So that's kind of the first major epiphany I want to point out, because that comes up a lot with the gym owners that we speak to. So then from there, you were running your ads, you had the gym open, you had a fat open house, but you weren't seeing that breakaway above that low 60 on the low end and then mid 80s on the high end. And then you saw us and you wanted to get some help. Do I have all that about right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Okay. So what do you think specifically, like what was the trigger moment that made you say, okay, that was it. It's time to get someone else in here?
honestly, it's just like the looming realization that everything I was doing for like, because like, a year and a half, the whole time, I'm just like, all right, are we going to break even? If we don't in so much time, we're going under. So the whole like 5-year initiative, the like entire community falls. So that's just like kind of worrying on the back of the mind and on the mental health. And so I'm just like going full time, like something has to change. And given what I know and what I've attempted, like I can keep trying all these things, but not like realistically in the back of my head, I'm like, I know nothing's going to happen. And so when I decided, all right, let's go all in, that was kind of the decision of, hey, let's find someone who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, that's great. And you can actually hear it. I'm so glad that you took the time to share like where NEPK started and the point where you got to where you realized that you had needed some help. And I'm sure so many people can relate to what you said, where you had started in multiple other gyms, gymnastics gyms as a small program, working with a dedicated community, and then to create like this optimistic and hopeful future, like we're going to make the place for parkour to be happening in Nebraska, only to realize like, wow, I have all of the ingredients of the cake. I have everything that I need to make this work, and it's still not going the way that it needs to. Like, that's a scary place that a lot of people can relate to. So many people that I have talked to just since becoming a consultant that has been through something really similar to that exact process. So that's so good of you to point out. And I'm curious as well, there you are, you hire us, we come in. Now, what stood out as moments of you turning that ship? There you are, it's not quite going the way that you want it to. Boom, the season changes, you get some new members, Motion Mentors comes in, more members begin spiking. Specifically, what was it that signaled to you like, wow, we're in a new place here?
Yeah. And I just want to also reassure and just like let the audience know, like the place, like just the whole experience of doing this. One, it's lonely, it's depressing, anxiety driving, and just like it is looming. So just having someone to reassure you and like identify the points that are just like, hey, you're doing this wrong and we can fix that. It's just like so relieving. And so when we flew you guys in, part of what you guys did was just training up. You hired on like a front desk team, a sales team for us. And so I went through part of that training. And so during the time you were here, we had like a walk-in or someone schedule like a tour or something. And like immediately they came in, you showed them around. And then they had like all these objections and all these things are like, well, we'll think about it, or it's not going to work with their schedule, or the price is too high. And then like you just talked to them and you had like the knowledge of things of like what to say and like how their worries are valid, but it's not necessarily like there's an answer to that makes it true that they can still sign up. And so one, it wasn't salesy at all. It was just like, hey, here's the logic behind it, and here's what's actually true. And then like you sign them up. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Why didn't I think of that? And it's kind of common knowledge, but like it's like the way it's designed and the way it's put is just like so artistic and so thoughtful too, that it's just like so attractive that people want to sign up after that.
Oh, what a compliment. Artistic and warm and works with the people. And I'm glad that you mentioned the sales process was one of those first cornerstones that you saw, like your ship starting to sail into a new wind. And that has been a big missing that we've seen at a lot of parkour gyms, frankly. And at my parkour gym, Freedom Motion, before we had any sales process at all, before I knew any sales training, we were in that same spot. So once I was able to plug in the software, plug in the strategy, and the actual like, let's try to get members mentality, it was a huge turnaround. So I want to bring the audience through just a couple of the specific elements of the sales pipeline that we plugged into your business, because it was such a huge turnaround. The first thing that we did was preemptively, we took a look at your marketing pipeline. It started with your website, which when we got our hands on it, it still had images of your outdoor program from before you opened the gym. So your homepage was still an adult athlete doing parkour somewhere else outside. When you scroll down, it was all outdoor images with adult athletes. And so one of the biggest things that I look for when I'm looking at marketing is your avatar identified? Your avatar, it's like a video game, it's the character that you build to represent yourself. But in sales, your avatar is the representation of who you're selling to. It's like the individual unit of your target audience. I know that for my parkour gym, our avatar is what I call the motivated mother. And it's a mom because we see mostly moms signing up their kids. And I have this whole big paragraph about what that specifically means. And so after interviewing you, Mitchell, it was very similar at your gym. So we switched out a lot of the creative on your website. We updated your landing page so that it spoke right to the parent, saying, hey, parent, this is parkour and here are the benefits for your kid. It's not, we're not talking about how sick Kong precision front flips are. We're not talking about like how cool it is that the Yamakazes came in and did whatever. We're talking about the benefit for the parent and the kid. Or the benefit for the target audience specifically. So we did that. And then next what we did was we plugged in all the leads coming in from your website when they would go and fill out the form. We made that connect to a CRM, a client relationship management software, where the future sales team would see those leads pop right into their interface. It says, Jennifer Bobby is like a new lead right here for the day. You can call her, email her, text her, all from the computer. And now you have a team that's specifically there just to do that, to make those calls. That's the sales engineering that I mentioned before. It's actually connecting the software in the back end from your website lead form or from your social media funnel to giving it to your sales team so that they can actually take action on it and then move that forward, get that ball down that court. So that was one of the first big things we said that we were going to implement, and then we did. And the next thing that you were just speaking to is the actual in-gym sales process. And this is also a huge missing with a lot of gyms, because it's one thing to have a huge packed open house with everyone in attendance, but it's a totally another way worse feeling thing when only one person signs up. And so that sales team, we equip them with, of course, like, here's exactly how you do a tour. Here's what you say so that you get the parent thinking and identifying with, oh, this could be my kid's sport. And you're saying really specific touch points along that journey. And then you give them a good pitch. And I'm training your sales team on like little nuanced things. One of them is an example of a assumptive-based sales language. So here you would say like, did you like the class? Do you want to sign up for membership? Maybe, which is really weak. And what we got your team doing was, given that you loved the class, this once a week membership is the best for you and your kid absolutely loved it. You are already here on Tuesday. That's awesome. So let's get you signed up next week on Tuesday. And you can just hear that you're bouncing it off of how much the kid loved it. You are already getting over the whole schedule objection because they're already here on Tuesday or whatever day. They're already here, so you can kind of hold them to account and walk them up the yes ladder of, oh, you're right, my kid did love it. Oh, you're right, I am here on Tuesday. You're giving them little yeses in their pocket so that then when you just serve them it's time to sign up, can I have your credit card, please? You're not even asking them, do you or did you? You're saying, let's get to it. And that you're assuming that they're yes, you're assuming that close, and your team really picked that up. And those are all the techniques that I used on that one person that you just mentioned. And when I was in the gym, when they walked in randomly and we sold them, and now your team is doing that. So it's really cool. I'm glad to hear you say that it's artistic, because it feels that way to the client, but behind the scenes, like, oh man, it's a science too. Absolutely.
And the other thing, I just want to point this out as well, because this is just super cool. And Mitchell, you can hear, even in your sharing, I could hear like the surprise at how that way of training didn't leave the customer with the experience of being sold something. When this training is done properly, you are doing it in a way that serves the customer. Literally, you're inviting them into your culture. You're doing what works best for them. And one of the most surprising aspects of it for me as a person that also attended the training was look at your sales team. They walked in one way. You had one sales team member that was so nervous to be there initially, doubting herself and being like, man, I don't know if this is appropriate for me. And through the process discovered, oh, actually, this is so simple. This is so simple and I can do this for sure. And then to go from feeling nervous about it to being an effective salesperson on the floor with you in 3 days, like that was amazing to see and so fulfilling for Jimmy and myself, because you're now equipped with someone that relates to sales conversations as simple and easy and knows what to do to have people join your community.
Yeah, no, it was, it's definitely just like a transformation for sure. And I want to give listeners an idea of like where we were before, like in regards to our sign up process, where we, because we just gave it like where we are now after you guys came in. But I want to explain like what we were doing before, so that way they know like what we were doing. And so our sign up process, I had the mindset of a lot of gym owners that it's, hey, if they love it, they'll sign up. And so working full time, I automated like 80% of the administrative duties that require someone to sign up. I pretty much didn't have to touch the customer sign up process at all. And so they could sign up, they could schedule a trial class, the free trial class, which leads to like, we don't do a free trial anymore after you guys. I'm so happy we don't. But so they schedule a trial, they get an email with the other information, they show up, we do the class, we say, we teach the kid, they love it. And then after that, we go up to the parent and say, hey, we hope you enjoyed it. You're going to receive an email, but here's how to sign up. And then it's on you if you want to sign up or not. And, that can lead, we had a really high conversion rate of like 2 to 3 kids who signed up a month, not considering like the 1 to 3 drops we had a month. And so our conversion rate was like pretty high, but it was just like 1 or 2 at a time. And then like with the free trial, we just get a lot of no-shows, a lot of people asking questions that was in the email. And so just like sending emails, sending things like that, they'll receive it, but that doesn't mean they're going to look at it. They just need someone to like a stimuli in their face to tell them like, hey, here's the information, let's get you signed up. And so, yes, parents will come in, they'll have their kids, the kids will love it, but that doesn't mean they're going to sign up. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah. So there's a few gold nuggets in there, starting with the trial class. So we have a whole article on this called The Curse of the Free Trial Class. If you want to read that, go to motionmentors.com/blog and find that one. The reason why we really, really suggest not to do free trial for other parkour gym owners listening who might be doing this is because when you say it's free, you are doing 2 major things working against yourself. The first one is that you're conveying that there's no value in this. You're saying this is just as valuable as literally all the other gyms in town that also offer free, of which most of them do. And that can work in your favor. You're saying like, okay, all those parents who just go around and tire kick and bargain shop, last week you did a free class at gymnastics, this week it's Nebraska Parkour, and next week it's going to be like Joe Schmo's whatever house. And so you invite those deal seekers in, and there is no value for them in their mind. The next thing is that the price anchoring is at 0. Price anchoring is the emotional peg in the wall of where you're taking people and saying this is going to cost about this much. And when you say it's free, you price anchor them at $0. And so it's mega hard for you then on the membership closing side to say, hey, great, I'm glad you enjoyed your free thing. Now let's walk you all the way up to $30 or $40 or whatever dollars a month, which is like actually infinitely more expensive. And now you're swimming upstream. It's much harder. Yeah. So I'm glad that you said that. It feels a lot better for you guys because that's huge. What is your sales velocity now? How many are you guys booking and how many are you guys closing? What's that look like?
Yeah. So when we flew you guys in, we were at 85. after like a year and a half of, just nothing. And now we're at like 126, not including open gyms, which we do a good amount, like at least 1 to 2 memberships or more worth of value every week. And then that also doesn't include students who are in multiple classes. We have since had one student who has signed up for 3 classes, which is like a lot of money. And then like multiple other students who are signed up for 2, as well as just siblings, which I just don't like signing up siblings because like, great, you get extra money, but also when they leave, it's just like a double gut punch to the gut. But they're all staying with us so far. And so it's been about 4 months or so since you guys came in. They've all stayed with us for the most part, and any of them that have dropped since, like we're getting like trials on a regular basis, so much more than we were before, and converting a lot quicker than what we have lost in the past. So anyone who's dropping now, like we're just signing up more, and so our average like month to month just keeps increasing even with our drops.
That's incredible, man. So after just a few months of working with us, it looks like on your low end of those 60 members, you've now doubled that. And on your high end, you're at 50% higher than that. And like you just said, you keep climbing and climbing up. That's really epic. And it wasn't just the sales, it was also the other side of that coin, coaching, because they have to love it to stick around and tell their friends and stick in it. And that was a huge piece that Christopher Hollingsworth brought to the table. Chris, will you tell us a bit what you did with Mitchell, him as a leader, and also his team, both when we were at the gym and then moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And oh man, as you were sharing, Mitchell, I was just over here so excited. Like I get so joyous, literally, that's your experience as a gym owner now, which is a thriving community, which is what you were committed to when you very first started in this process. And like, that is so freaking cool. And one of the aspects that I am so committed to is when you break through and you start having that huge community, what's also there is the net to catch it and a supportive infrastructure to maintain and cultivate the community that you now have in your gym. And so that comes down to the coaching. Now, luckily, when I got there, your staff already had all of the makings of excellent customer service and fantastic coaching. I think one of the instructors there left a review that said, after working through the workshop that I provided, it just took a lot of the pieces that he had collected as a coach over the last decade and created it in a succinct and easily deliverable and act-onable format so that he could just lead fantastic classes. And so, like I said, luckily when I got there, your coaches were ready for that kind of training. And so the training really included child behavioral management, being able to identify the different personality types that walk through your gym so that you can, on the fly, cater to those personality types in a way that you address the sources of any of their misbehavior rather than the symptoms of their misbehavior. And so oftentimes coaches enable this behavior and allow it to continue unconsciously. And so just being able to put a roadblock right in the way of that and say, nope, this is how we interact with kids, immediately made a difference. And I was able to be there for a week with you and audit and see how those classes went. And the amount of times I saw a parent walk up to one of your instructors after a class and say, I love the way that you spoke to my kid, like, was numerous. There were many times that had happened. And that process complements the sales team as well. when your coaches are trained in interacting with students and they're leading a class that is well organized and teaching the students not just physical and mental strength, but social skills and emotional development and interacting in a group properly, like when parents see that, it is a no-brainer for them to then sign up with us because they see immediately the value and the impact that participating in your programs would have on their kids and on their life. And that's when you get the parents who drive an hour out of their way to be at your gym a week, or just like you said, the kid that's like, hey, I don't care how much money this costs. I'm going to be here 3 to 5 times a week. You know, you get tons of different customers like that because they see the commitment that your coaches have, the skill that they have interacting with them. And then that becomes your brand as a gym. That becomes what your gym is now associated with forever as a customer experience and as what to expect from a service that you're providing. So you nailed it basically just across the board. You brought in such a good staff even before I got there that, you know, I'm just complimenting what you've already built. Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And again, with our program, I try and really train up the coaches and give them the tools that they need. So a lot of what the coach training curriculum is just like physics and psychology based. So we teach them about projectile motion. We teach them about physiology and anatomy, which muscle groups are being hit, which ones you have to watch out for if you like doing a roll, behavior modification, punishers, positive reinforcement, shaping, chaining, physical, different types of prompts, physical, environmental, visual, cue based. So we were already teaching that, but one, I want to reemphasize, I want to just state that they are not paying me to say good things. I paid them. And so if it sounds like that, sorry, but yes, with your training, it just wraps up and just codifies a lot of like intersocial based and psychology based reactions, interactions, and identifiers on how to handle certain children. And it's super digestible. We literally have 2 booklets printed out with the curriculum that Chris posts on Instagram. And you can look at it and be like, okay, but actually seeing it in person, you're like, whoa, so that's how you talk to a kid. And yeah, you taught a couple classes for us for a week. And I remember seeing a parent whose kid just has like ADHD. And one of my most resilient coaches who has like the most difficult classes and just knows how to push through that without being like worn down or like without his confidence being wrecked. He coaches us really well. He does struggle a little bit and he doesn't necessarily have like the psychology based background, but you taught his class and that parent came up to you and was like, wow, that was an amazing class. And then they just started asking you a bunch of questions. You played a game with them that they absolutely loved. And now it's like, one, we just didn't have that game because we love tag, like that's what kids love. But now that game is our most requested game by students. Like literally every class, every week, both teens and teens and kids are like, can we play the game? Like, well, we kind of got to do other stuff, but like, it just brought a ton of value in regards to ending classes with that, having the parent just see their kid happy, and then handing them off to like, hey, here's a sales team. They're going to try and sell you in a nice way. And then it just happens. So.
Oh man, that just makes me so happy to have contributed to the environment in the way that you just shared that I did. Is like, that's like the fulfillment of my life right there. I'm like, I love, that's why I'm alive. That's so awesome. And, you know, I just want to point out, like, that's something that Motion Mentors is so committed to providing the community, which is equipping coaches with the ability to make the impact they're committed to making. Every coach wants to have that kind of impact on a student. You know, and most parkour athletes and coaches can really identify with, man, I was one of those hyperactive kids. I was one of those kids that adults didn't really know how to speak to or interact with. And now, I was a kid that could have used someone that had my training, you know what I mean? And now that these coaches are getting equipped with this training, they can communicate so effectively with people that have ADHD, people that are on the spectrum for autism, or, just various neurodivergent brains. We can now communicate with them in a really effective way that has them able to socialize in groups and participate all out in learning the skills of parkour, and then also have a fantastic game to play at the end of every class that, one, enhances their parkour skill, and two, just they will never forget parkour class for the rest of their life because they have so much joy associated with it. So that is awesome. I love hearing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that just tells me yep, mission accomplished with the coaches training. That's awesome.
There's another thing in there as well. And you said after the class, the coach walks them up to the front desk and then hands them off at the front desk. So here is where Chris's masterful coaching pairs with what we gave to your sales team, and really converts into a huge amount of membership signing up just over and over and over, and then them telling all their friends. And that is the connection between the two is what we call the perfect first day policy. And that would be, it's a student's first day, they come in, and as soon as they walk in the door, it really begins. And the front desk sales team representative greets them by name, already knows who they are because when they got there that day, they just looked up, okay, like Billy Joe is coming. I'm going to write down his name, I'm going to write down the time. There they are in the parking lot walking up. I'm going to get ready. They walk in, they greet them with open arms, and then they come and introduce them to the coach. And the coach is probably still setting up for their class, but they'll say, hey, Coach John, come over here and meet Billy Joe. And we instructed the coaches to walk over, be like, oh my gosh, so good to meet you. My name is Coach John. We're going to be in this section. Our class starts at this time. If you have any questions, it's a little bit dependent on how much time they have, because sometimes those people come in at the last second, but we always try there's a few scenarios on what happens, but at least there's a connection. And then those people sit down, the front desk staff just gets them ready and keeps that warm interaction going. And then the coach invites them out, invites the new kid by name, every single time by name. And then they have that awesome class. And then that class ends with that awesome game. And paired off of that, the coach walks them up, says like, okay, that was your first class. Hey, little Billy Joe, let's go talk to your mom. Gets together with that parent. It could be dad, could be mom, could be grandma, and then walks them all over to the front desk. And now is using the front desk person's name. Hey, Maria, Billy Joe here had such an awesome time in class. Billy, good job today in those, we did hand balancing and you totally crushed it. High fives them and says, next week, we're going to do precision jumps, or we're going to finally do that thing that you asked about. I'm going to see you next week, right? Gets high five from Billy. And now we just got him up a huge rung on the yes ladder. The parent just saw that the kid does want to come back next week, did just say to the coach that they are coming back next week. That is a huge milestone that now the parent cannot say like, oh, I don't know if my kid likes it. Well, we'll come back next week, because the coach just took care of that. Anyway, gets the high five, says, okay, guys, see you next week. And then the coach, goes back to doing their setting up for the next class. And then the sales team takes over. And then it's that whole perfect first pitch, which is a whole entire thing I'll train them on. If they do have any remaining questions like price, or I need to talk to my spouse, or, our sporting season is starting up, there's actually like a very finite amount of objections that frequently come up, and we train the team on all of them. And then they get closes. And then now you can kind of see that whole pipeline of it starts all the way in the beginning with like a great website, great marketing, sales engineering. The leads come in, your sales team books them like crazy. They come in, have that epic class, and then they are actually sold to. You can see the whole thing right here in front of you. And Mitchell, it sounds like that's working really well, the whole entire circuit at your gym.
Yeah. And that is, we adopted a lot of, we pretty much adopted everything you guys got. And like, I had some hesitations bringing you guys in. I'm like, all right, well, maybe we can do this without this. And so just like the comfortability of like having that option, like that was always there for me. So I could have, if you guys brought in something that I wasn't comfortable with, like I could say no, and you guys were okay with it. But again, like the proof points weren't there. I don't own 3 gyms. I haven't worked for USPK or been an athlete for that or been a judge. So it was kind of like it was kind of stupid of me to say no to these things when the proof points are there. And then like just saying yes to these, especially when it was a turnkey operation with the plan we went with, where you guys do all the work. I don't have to touch it. And then you hand it over to me. You train me up on how to do it. And then it's just working. Was really nice.
Glad to hear it.
But yeah.
One thing I want to ask you about, Mitchell, is, and we haven't really mentioned it yet, there was one thing that really was terrifying for you that I did say, you really have to do this actually. It probably won't work if you don't do this. And that was raising your prices. And so when we got there, Mitchell was at the time, there's actually a new record holder. At the time, the least expensive parkour gym I had ever seen. And Mitchell, you were around like, I think 80, $85 a month-ish, if I have that right. And so we wanted to increase that by basically 50%. It was like 56% or something like that. And Mitchell, tell me a little bit about like, how did that sound to you? What were all your considerations and fears? And then tell us what actually happened.
Yeah. Are you, can I like list what we were and then like the actual price that we jumped to? Is that
totally? Yeah.
So we were actually less than 85. We were charging $18.95 per class. And before we were charging $21.25 per class, and we weren't getting anyone to sign up. And that was when we launched. And we did like the paid trial. We just weren't doing it right. And then we dropped to $18.95 after so long. And so I'm like, all right, so there's no other gym. We got to compete locally with other gymnastics facilities. Okay, we're going to price even lower. So that way people are like, ooh, let's do this because it's cheaper and we can afford it. And so that just like seeing that and then growing from like those 5 to 10 students to the 65 that we were at once we got this gym, it was like, all right, yeah, that makes sense. That's why we got to this point. And so, yeah, Jimmy, you were just like, hey, you can increase your prices. I'm like, I probably could, but I don't know. I don't know how we would probably lose some customers. And then, yeah, I just like was open to it. I'm like, hey, you guys know best. And then I remember at the dinner, I think at that time you didn't think I was considering it still. And then you mentioned it. And like, I was just like, all right, we can try it. And you're like, okay, I'll work on that tonight. And so you gave me 2 options, jumping, you gave me like the low tier, like we're going to jump $18.95 to a little bit higher. And then we're going to jump from $18.95 to $30 per class. I was like, oh my God. And I still remember that feeling. I was just terrifying. And once like, all right, one, I don't think it's going to work. We're going to lose a bunch of customers, but I was like, all right, let's do it. We'll do it. We'll try it. And so one, you guys just have a beautiful email that goes out, a beautiful way to contact customers and let them know, hey. And this is also another thing that just was really reassuring, like Chris pointed out in that conversation, was like, hey, we're increasing our prices, but we want you guys to still do parkour. And if you can't, please reach out to us. And then we gave parents options to stay with us in a way that was comfortable with them, that they could afford it if they were in that customer segment. And so we ended up raising prices from $18.95 per class to $30 per class. I remember receiving an email where a customer was like, wow, raising prices by 58%. Let's sign up for a long-term plan, which is what we offered. And so we were at probably 85 then. Actually 90 then. So we had 90 customers by that point. It was around like the seasonal demand of like December to January. And so we had like 10 drops. And so it might have been attributed by seasonal demand, but usually that balances out for us historically. So we could attribute that to just the price increase. And we reached out to them multiple times. Some of them, we had that. Then we had like 25 to 30 people lock in a long-term plan, like a 6 to to 12 month long-term plan. We offered longer term plans, and we generated like 17,000, 18,000 in revenue from that alone. So with 90 students, we had, let's say, the 10 who dropped, the 25 to 30 who locked in a plan. Everyone else who stayed with us, with that price increase, we still made more the following month than we have in previous months, not including the customers who locked in a plan and dropped.
That's amazing. So, yeah, I love how much revenue you got just off of raising the prices, because those people gave you a massive vote of confidence because they saw the coaching was there. They could visually see the improvements that we were bringing to your gym. One thing we didn't mention was we kind of redesigned your whole front desk office area, just made it look great. And then also plugged in the new staff, and the coaches were being the great coaches they are. And that vote of confidence in light of that huge price increase, huge in air quotes, it's actually not that big. They were then like, yep, let's lock in this rate. You made $17,000. And then that powers you to turn right back around and do the things that you know you needed to do for your gym. Like you guys needed to get a drinking fountain in there. You wanted to do X, Y, and Z other things to continue to show that increase in value to your community. And I think at the time, I don't actually know what you did with this. You can tell us, but I told you to take some of that money and pay yourself. And I think you hadn't really given yourself a solid paycheck in a while. So what did you actually do with that upfront cash?
So I will say I haven't paid myself, but it's like I have that chunk saved to do it. And so one, I haven't paid myself with this company the entire 5 to 6 years we've been running it. Part of it is just because I've been doing it full time, except for recently, but now I can pay myself a little bit and make it sustainable because I live pretty frugally anyway, and still put money back into the business. With the long-term plan revenue we generated, there are 2 routes we can go. The first route is we can pour it back into the business, pour it into more marketing, get more leads, pour it into equipment that I would just like to get into this building. And just reinvest it smartly. The other option, which is what I'm kind of banking on, is we have a 22,250 square foot space. I am waiting on the landlord to give us the option to move into a 9,000 square foot space within the building. And so using that kind of to expand into a larger size, because with this space, after hiring you guys and having our numbers increase, we had to open up 10 new classes because we ran out of space filling classes. And so now it's just like getting leads in. It's no longer necessarily about selling them. It's like, okay, we don't have classes on every day of the week now, and we've hired on one maybe, and we're looking to hire more coaches. And so it's just like more of a landlocked situation than anything that we're having trouble with.
Yeah, these are the problems you want to have as a gym owner.
So good.
Now we need to open up more classes. Yeah, and I want to point out because so many gym owners can identify with the fear that you experienced about raising your prices. That is so scary. I am not going to say who, but I've been watching a gym deal with an issue where they have been afraid to raise prices, and they try to accommodate every single person and cater to that conversation, and it burns them out. It burns out their staff. It's been horrible. And so for you to lock in that way while also still staying true to your values is incredible to see, because you did have that consideration of, I never want price to ever be a bar of entry for participating in my community. I never want that to be a bar of entry. And you have that cake and you ate that too. You know what I mean? Because you were able to say to those people, yep, just approach us with a conversation. We will make sure that you're taken care of. And I guarantee, just like I told you at that dinner, that percentage would be so small, that it wouldn't impact anything else. And I'm glad to hear that that's actually the way that it went, because For those few people that really cannot afford a price increase, you have got their back. And for the people that can afford it, they want to contribute to your business. They want to see that value reinvested into their community, so that's just amazing, Mitchell. Seriously.
So from here, what do you think you're going to be committed to moving forwards? How has this impacted you as an entrepreneur? How are you going to run the business strategically into the future? I have a big fat note here that says get Mitchell to pay himself. So I'm going to work on that with you. But let's say in theory you are paying yourself and this is a good job for you now. How does this empower you, Mitchell, to go out into the world, like kind of aside from Nebraska Parkour? And how does it impact that as well?
Yeah. One, I will say, kind of wrapping up with the price increase. One, with the price increase, we can pay coaches a fair wage now, which makes it more attractive for people to want to work here. And so that just, one, after they're trained up, that just frees up my time, which is nice. And so your question was, what does that mean for me now? Inside of the gym, like I want to grow it. I want to make it even bigger. One, to just make a cool place, a cool community for the state of Nebraska. And then two, also just, it's nice to get paid, right? So I would like to make a decent amount, which is honestly, what I'm making now would be fine. But going out in the world, it's like, okay, I have more time. I have more resources. We kind of have a triple bottom line. So we have the People, the Profit, and the Planet initiative. And so one, at least I care about the environment and I care about the people, which with our employees, that's why we have a fair wage. But we also have DEI considerations. So we'd like to run, and we can afford it now, classes for low income and people of color to come in and we can run free workshops if we want for those communities. And it's in the pipeline. And we're also possibly thinking of a sliding scale, kind of like how INSO movement does it. But we gotta look more into that, but just providing accessibility to parkour for those communities who are disadvantaged. And then just like being able to pour back into the community with that revenue and just making sure our environment and keeping up with like the philosophy of parkour, like, hey, leave no trace. The gym costs carbon emissions, the gym costs wood, trees and everything. So just like TerraCycling and just companies like that to be like, we can offset our emissions and offset our impact on the planet. And then eventually, like long-term, I like to go into that separate from the business and just go into schooling again and eventually work into like energy engineering and whatnot. So that's my long-term plan.
I love that. And now that you've seen how we set up these systems around sales, around coaching, around business operations, and you just said you now have the time to do that. So going into your philanthropics, going into those personal passions, is you now have access to doing that from this work that we did with you. That is awesome. A second ago, Chris said that like validates like what his reason for being is. That validates my reason for being, is empowering you, the entrepreneur, not only to assist me in my goal of teaching 1 million people parkour. Now NEPK is solidly contributing to that. But me and you share a huge like climate initiative, climate action, personal responsibility. So me learning that you are now like even more an ally for the planet, like, let's go, man. That is so good. I love it.
And, a lot of gym owners too, they have personal goals and aspirations and ambitions that they want to do, using the finances that they secure from a successful business. And I just want to point out that the profits that you make at your gym is an access to fulfilling on who you want to be for the planet as well. And you can't make the impact that you want to make if your cup isn't full, So that's really great that you're at that point and your initiative has increased.
Yeah, so, these just like the gym and like personal life, like those aren't mutually exclusive. And so we're like at that point, we're getting even more to that point, which is just so nice.
Absolutely. All right. In closing, if you were to speak to other parkour business owners, other parkour gym owners who may be following along, but there's a lot of I can figure it out myself in parkour, there's a lot of like, I'm going to struggle my way through this because that's what I do as an athlete. I grind until it happens, which can work in sports, but you could also just get a coach and rocket to the top, get to where you want to be faster. Mitchell, what would you say to an entrepreneur who is in that same bucket of maybe they're listening, maybe they're unsure, maybe they have very similar problems and they just haven't taken the step to reach out for help yet? What's your message to them?
Yeah. Three different points is one, my workflows, my behaviors are just like, it's a lot easier for someone just to tell me what to do. I hate making choices. And so having you guys come in and just like, hey, do this. I'm like, oh, cool. And then it's the answer instead of me getting mistakes wrong. And it's just nice working with other people. I have my coaching staff, but they don't make the decisions. We make the decisions as a team, but it's based on like assumptions or guesswork or guesstimations. I will say we flew you guys in. We chose the highest tier package, but I knew at the time like I was gonna make mistakes. It was gonna take time. It's just another guesswork on staying in the 60s and just like a lot of stress. So why do that when I can just get everything at once? And then again, we made that revenue within the like 2 months plus. And then even more sustainable. In like after our bare minimum right now, we're gonna be making $15,000 a month at the numbers we have in like 6 to 12 months. But that's assuming we don't sign anyone up, which we are going to, and we are now actually. So that's point 2. The last point is just like you had me connect with another gym owner. There was you had them connect with me because they're also considering it's like what plan they want to go with your services. And so their status was a lot like ours, where they were charging that $75 a month, which is what we were before. This person is the only coach, but where he was at, we were in business for 4 to 5 years with our own gym, and we were like at like low 60s. He was in business for 1 year in a town of like 3,000 people, where we have a town of like 150,000+ people. But he already had 75 students. So he had in 1 year by himself more students than we had over 4 years and like 4 coaches. But I think that speaks to the proof point that like it's not necessarily the size of the city. It's not like necessarily how good you are at marketing or like the video ads you're running. It's just like doing it right. And then having, honestly, it's just like the knowledge that you guys bring in transform that. And so just comparing where he was versus where we were, given our city size versus his, like that really didn't matter. Yeah, I think that just speaks to a lot of just like the need of what we were lacking until we flew you guys in.
Okay, got it. So sounds like you would encourage someone to seek help, encourage someone to investigate what is possibly missing in their gym with some people who have been there and done that and have gotten results with other people before.
Oh, I was just going to say, I love the point of, you bought our highest tiered package and then made that money back within 2 months, and your gym is now at a more sustainable place financially moving forwards from our having worked together. And that is like, if that doesn't put anyone who has a consideration about working with a mentor, if that doesn't put your fears to rest, I don't know what will. Like this, that you will make your money back within 1 to 2 months, and your gym will be at a permanently improved place financially from having worked with us. I can't think of like a better guarantee, that's just really awesome.
Cool. All right, guys. So that pretty much wraps it up. Mitchell, you have any last things you want to put out there for us?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think if you're a gym owner, you're like, hey, I have questions. Can you answer them? Like, just go to nebraskaparkour.com, like go to the contact us page, or even the try out a class, and just our front desk team will reach out to you and just be like, hey, can I talk to the owner? I own a gym. Like, just do it and I'll hop on a call with you. I'm open to that. So
yeah, you can get Mitchell's unbiased, unfiltered experience of what it was to work with us. And when you're ready for it, go to motionmentors.org. We always do a free consultation call, consultative sales, whole thing, just like Mitchell said at the top of this interview. We want to meet you where you are at, really understand where we can make an impact with you. We'll show you exactly where we can make an impact, what we think that'll look like on the other side. And then it's totally up to you. And for everyone else, we have free resources. We're always uploading, content to our blog on YouTube, or our podcast on YouTube, our blog on